Did you? Did you ever sell anything that you didn't have that feeling of enthusiasm over what you were trying to do for the other fellow? You may have thought you did, but you didn't. If you didn't have that feeling of enthusiasm on your own initiative, then you didn't make a sale. Somebody may have bought something from you because he needed it and had to have it, but you had very little to do with it unless you had that feeling that you imparted to him. And how do you impart the feeling of enthusiasm to another person? How do you do that when you're selling, for instance?
By being sure and smiling. And that feeling runs out in your mind.
Fine. Must be sold on it yourself. That's a very good way of putting it. In other words, it starts inside of your own emotional makeup. You must feel that way. And if you open your mouth to speak, you must speak with enthusiasm. You must put some enthusiasm into the expression of your face. Put on a smile, a good broad one. Because nobody speaks with enthusiasm with a frown on his face. The two just don't go together, do they? No, they don't. So there are a lot of things that you must learn about this business of expressing enthusiasm if you're going to make the most of it, and all of them involve your personal initiative. You've got to do it. Nobody can do it for you. I can't tell you how to be enthusiastic. I can tell you what are the component parts of enthusiasm and how to express it, but after all, the job of actually expressing it is up to you. Let's pass on down to number 12, tolerance. Do you know what tolerance is? What is it? Open mind on what? How many of you are open-minded on everything? Come on. You really think you are? I'd hate to tell you how far off you are on that one. Because you're friends of mine and I want to keep you that way. Open-minded on all subjects? I'll admit that I'm not. I'm not open-minded on all subjects. I'm open-minded on a lot of subjects, the ones I want to be open-minded on. But we shouldn't. We shouldn't have any attitude toward anybody under any circumstances unless it's based upon something to justify that attitude, or what we believe to justify it, at least. Do you have any idea how much value do you deprive yourselves of all the way through life just because you close your mind against somebody you don't like, when that person might be the most beneficial person in the world to you if you only had an open mind toward him? Did you know that one of the costliest things in an industrial or a business organization is the closed minds of the people that work there? Did you know that? If you don't know that, I want you to find it out. It's the most costly thing in any business organization or in any industry is the closed minds of the people who work there, closed toward one another, closed toward opportunities, closed toward the people they serve, and closed toward themselves. When you speak of intolerance, you often think of somebody who doesn't like the other fellow because of his religion or his politics. Well, that doesn't scratch the surface of the real meaning of this subject of intolerance. It extends to almost every human relationship. And unless you do form the habit of maintaining an open mind on all subjects, toward all people, at all times, you'll never be a great thinker. You'll never have a great magnetic personality. And you certainly will never be very well liked unless you do have an open mind. Did you know that you can be very frank with people whom you don't like and who do not like you if they know that you're sincere and that you're speaking with an open mind? Did you know that? The one thing that people will not tolerate is to recognize that they're talking to somebody whose mind is already closed and what they're saying has no effect whatsoever, regardless of how much value there is to it or how much truth there is to it. And there are a lot of people in this world whose minds are so definitely closed on so many things that you couldn't crack the mind with a sledgehammer and you couldn't get an ounce of truth in there if you lived 100 years. They're just closed up tight, sealed, hermetically sealed. Number 13, the habit of doing more than you're paid for, always. How many do that? Let me have your hands. What's the matter with the ones who don't? Is there anything wrong with this habit of... Oh, that word always. All right, let's leave it off. How many of you follow the habit of rendering more service and better service than you're paid to render? Part of the time. Part of the time. Well, that's more like it. That's more like it. That's something in connection with which you certainly have to move on your personal initiative. Nobody's going to tell you to do that. Nobody's going to expect you to do that. That's something that's entirely within your own prerogative. But incidentally, it's probably one of the most important and one of the most profitable sources through which you can exercise your own personal initiative. If I had to pick out the time and the place and the circumstance under which you could make use of your personal initiative most beneficially, undoubtedly, it would be in connection with your following the habit of rendering more service and better service than you're paid to render, because you don't have to ask anybody for the privilege of doing that. And also, if you do follow that habit, not just do it once in a while, that's not so very effective, but follow the habit. Sooner or later, the law of increasing returns begins to pile up dividends for you, and when the dividends come back, they come back greatly multiplied. I want to tell you that when you start living by this principle of going the extra mile, you can expect unusual things to happen to you, and they'll all be pleasant, every one of them. And number 14, tactfulness and a keen sense of diplomacy. How many of you have tactfulness and a keen sense of diplomacy? Let me see your hands on that one. Well, now, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. Well, now, maybe that definition is a little too broad. How many of you are tactful in your conversations with people, just ordinary conversations? Tactful. Well, that's pretty good. What do you think about this business of being tactful? Is it worth the time it takes to be tactful, do you think?
Yes.
You think it is? Why?
Never heard anyone not infringing on somebody else's cooperation of others.
That's right. Now you're getting at it. You get the cooperation of others more easily if you're tactful. You come in and tell me that I've got to do something, and I say, well, maybe now just a minute. Just a minute. Maybe I do have to do something, but if you put it to me that way, I'm going to set up some resistance right away. But if you come in and say to me, I would very greatly appreciate it if you would do something, but you knew in the first place that you had a right to demand on me, but you didn't put it that way. One of the most impressive things that I learned from Andrew Carnegie at the very beginning of my association with him was that he never commanded anybody to do anything. Never. No matter who the man was that he requested to do something, he never commanded him. He always asked him if he would do a certain thing. Would you please do a certain thing, or will you do the other thing? And it's surprising the amount of loyalty that Mr. Carnegie had from his men. They'd go out of their way for him any time of the day or night because of his tactfulness in dealing with them. And when it was necessary for him to discipline one of them, he usually invited him out to the house and gave him a nice state dinner, a real 5 or 6 course dinner, really put on the dog. And then after dinner, the showdown came when they went over to the library. And he'd start asking questions. One of his chief secretaries was scheduled to become a member of his mastermind group. And this boy found out that he was scheduled for promotion, and it went to his head, and he commenced to run around with a bunch of highbinders in Pittsburgh